There we are. It's Dr. Hilary Jones here. You might know me from morning television and general practice radio, and I'm with Tom Cheesewright.
Hi, I'm Tom Cheesewright, applied futurist. I work with brands like Willoughby to help them to see what's next. And I'm going to be talking to you about the holiday of the future.
Fantastic. And I'm here with Tom to talk about this report that's been commissioned by Willoughby Staycations and Holiday Homes. It's a really interesting report called The Willoughby's Great British Break-Off. And it's all about the value of staycations and holidays here at home in the UK and how good they can be for mental health and well-being. So we welcome your comments. We want your feedback on this. Times are changing, and we'll hear more about the way things are changing in the future from Tom in due course. But it's really interesting right at the moment. You know, there's so much uncertainty going on, and perhaps never before have we needed a good break for our mental health as much as we do now. And there are a lot of people who are very anxious, a lot of people who aren't sleeping very well. And sometimes we just need to get away from that constant wall-to-wall gloomy news that seems to be pervading the media at the moment and everyone's talking about. So between us, we hope to give you some perspective on this. We hope to lift your spirits, answer your questions, and talk about the value of staycations. Nice places to go to in this country, what it can do for us, where to choose, what the benefits are. And one of the things I found really interesting, Tom, I don't know about you, is that a lot of people in this report said, this is half of everybody in the report said they prefer to take shorter duration breaks than longer ones. And you think that would be completely the opposite of what people have chosen to do up till now. You know, a long holiday, get away from it all, forget about your problems, pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, get away from it all. But actually now people are saying, nope, I prefer to take regular short breaks rather than the long ones. What do you think, Tom?
Now, I think that's really important, that frequency of getting away, particularly at the moment. It's been such a weird time for so many of us. And, you know, it's even those of us who are used to going on in front of a camera, it's really different seeing sat at home, always in the same environment, performing in your home environment constantly. And so that ability to get away, to change the scenery, to get some fresh inspiration, frankly, to get away from the screen and the camera for a week is enormously important. You know, I felt I had to do it a few weeks ago. It was like, right, pack the family in a car, get out of here, go and take a break.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people are saying exactly the same things. When we asked people in the report, the Great British Break-Off report, why they like to take short staycations, there were lots of different reasons, actually. One was just convenience. Look, you know, you don't have to pack very much for a short stay. You can throw your things into a suitcase, really, at the drop of a hat. There's not a huge amount of planning that you would need if you went, you know, further afield on a long haul flight. So you don't need your passport. You don't need all that stuff that you have to pack just in case. You've got the NHS on the doorstep, which is, you know, forefront of people's minds right now. And also people sometimes don't want to be away from what's going on so much. They want to stay in contact. They can take their pets with them. It's another big plus. It's very difficult to take your pets apart from sort of nearby in Europe. And even then it can be a bit of a hassle, as you know. So I think traveling also with family, with your extended family, a lot of intergenerational interest, you know, grandparents wanting to travel with grandchildren. And I think that's really good. Nostalgia was another thing that came up. You know, I remember my childhood when my parents took me to the beach down in Cornwall, or we went to the lake, we went boating in Cumbria. Those things are very memorable, very nostalgic, and people like to relive some of those things. So for me, Tom, I don't know about you, but the Cumbria would be one of my favourites, the Lake District, Cornwall, Brecon Beacons. There are so many places to explore in the UK. We don't always have to go that far afield.
No, absolutely. Like you, I have incredible memories growing up on the beach in Wales, sort of regular trips away. And exactly the sort of thing you talked about, the ability to just jump in the car for a weekend or a week and get away from it all. And they're really formative memories. But actually, the place I've started exploring recently for the first time is Northumberland. What a gorgeous, gorgeous part of the world. And we were very lucky a few weeks ago to get some incredible weather, incredible scenery, those giant open skies, and really explore somewhere new.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting how children don't seem to mind what the weather is anyway? You know, I spent about a year in Shetland years ago working up there, and some of the beaches there are the best in the world. The problem is the weather isn't always great. When the weather's great up there, well, you couldn't want anywhere better. But even, you know, places like, as you say, Northumberland, the beaches are lovely, and there are some beautiful coastal walks, and children don't seem to mind. It's just the fresh air, being at one with nature, looking at the sea view, going on a ramble, doing things that you wouldn't do at home. It's actually very good for one's mental health, I think, to explore new things, to get away from that old routine. And you're doing things with your family, aren't you, on a staycation that you wouldn't do at home? You know, people have their own little departments, the bedroom for the kids and the lounge for the parents, and never the twain shall meet. And I think it's really good to be able to share experiences together.
Different rules as well. I'm much more relaxed about how much ice cream we eat when I'm away.
Me too. Not ice cream either, consume all sorts of things. Now, Tom, I mean, the future, it is really interesting. I mean, things have already changed because of the pandemic. We'll get through the pandemic. We will get through that. And these are unprecedented and challenging times. But going forward, where do you see the holidays of the future?
You know, there's so much to look at. It was a really interesting piece of research to do for Willoughby. Such a great challenge, one of my favourite briefs of the last year. And you know, particularly that thing about how long we holiday for, I thought was really interesting. Because right now, like you say, people are looking to take lots of really short holidays, get that frequency of break and difference and a gap from day-to-day life. But actually in the future, if you look at the changes in the way we work, more and more we're working flexibly. We can work remotely. And the pandemic, if it's done one good thing, it's demonstrated how well we can work away from the office. You start to think, actually, maybe we'll start to take fewer, longer holidays. Maybe actually instead of taking that week away for a change of scene, we take a month off, 3 months off, go and live somewhere completely different for 3 months. Because you know what? You don't have to put your life on hold, particularly if you're staying in the same country. None of the sort of visa challenges. Obviously, you have a declining international relationship that might make international travel harder right now. But getting off to somewhere completely different around the UK and getting a real change of scene for 1, 2 months, 3 months maybe, and really doing something completely different. So I think that's really interesting. And if you are going away for that length of time, you really have an opportunity to build up some new relationships. You know, one of the things we've seen, again, while we're all locked down, we're all isolated, is this real missed opportunity to meet new people, to get out, meet new people, broaden your social cohort, meet people with a different sort of view on life. And so I think one of the really important things for the holiday of the future, and something we're really going to travel for, is to go and broaden our horizons in terms of the people we know and who we meet. Now, you know, that staycation thing, and I think the popularity of staycations right now is really interesting. Because if you look at some of the challenges that the holiday faces in the next few years, they could actually be growing in popularity. We really might see some interesting activity around the really beautiful spots around the UK. Because if you look at issues like climate change, we're going to see some real both economic challenges. It's going to get more expensive to do these long haul, high carbon trips over long distance. But actually, you know, we're going to sort of frown on it socially as well. You know, disappearing off for 2 weeks in the sun and, you know, burning a few trees down in the process may not be the most appealing thing to lots of people. So actually, I think, you know, we're going to see people traveling more and more around the UK and the near distance to avoid that, and maybe making those really long holidays. You know, occasionally every 3-4 years, a long holiday where they go and travel around Asia or something, but perhaps not doing that 2-week run to the sun every now and again. The other thing I really wanted to pull out of this actually is come back to and finish on this idea of the frequent shorter holidays. You look at what's happening to our lives as we grow up now. We're all living longer. We know this. You know, the latest reports out of the University of Washington show that globally we're all sort of the aging of the population, but also the average age of the population is increasing more than ever. And actually what that's done is to time shift so many of the classic markers of adult life much later. So whereas you used to think of your early 20s as the period in which you might buy a house, buy a car, settle down, have your first kid, that's moving later and later now, up towards your 30s and even towards 40, where all those things start to happen. So you've got this long extended adolescence where you're quite possibly sharing a home, perhaps still with your parents till much later than you might have wanted to, but quite often, you know, a shared house or perhaps a buy to rent property, you know, build to rent property with quite a small living environment and lots of shared space. And so a frequent getaway to somewhere, you know, in the UK might be a great way just to get away from people as well as to meet new people, get a bit of distance, get a bit of space. And especially if, as I say, you can work remotely, just, you know, pack up, you know, get out of the city, go and work somewhere different and live in a beautiful place for a while where you can get back to nature, as you said.
And it might be a lot less stressful, mightn't it? Not having to commute, not having to take those crowded trains and buses and sit in the traffic. There could be many, many benefits to this kind of work in the future. I mean, I'm fascinated by your crystal ball. You know, I remember, you know, I did have a sabbatical when I was a general. I've been in general practice for 10 years, and I had a sabbatical, and I went to look at media and television touring the States, which was interesting. But even before that, I did a French exchange as a schoolboy. And I was lucky enough to spend 3 months with the French family. And, you know, when I came back, I had to adjust to coming back to the culture that I was brought up in. So I got into the sort of mood of being French, and I was speaking fluent French. And it doesn't take too long to completely change the way you think and, you know, the cultures that you're interested in, and add to the ones that you were brought up in. And so I think that the opportunities that may be afforded to people in the future, as you say, can be potentially mind-blowing.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives you a whole new lens on your life. I'm hoping that, you know, encore tu parles bien français, oui.
Ah oui, un peu. Je peux essayer un peu. Pas grand, mais vraiment, j'essaie, hein.
But, you know, it brings a new lens to life. It gives you new experiences. And, you know, one of the things that really came out in the report as well is how important those experiences are. You know, so much of our lives is mediated by digital now, by screens. And actually our lives have got safer and safer as well. You know, there's very few opportunities for risk now. And one of the things, you know, the really big opportunities that are going out there and getting into these different spaces and places, as well as meeting new people, not mediated by a screen, is actually meeting nature and meeting risk. You know, doing all those sort of exciting sports, climbing mountains, abseiling, crawling through rocky caverns, windsurfing, whatever it may be, whatever floats your boat. Maybe it is a boat. You know, I think there's such a huge opportunity there to shift your lens, to change your experience, to get beyond that sort of day-to-day normal, as I say, which is so often mediated by all things digital.
That's very interesting about needing a little bit of risk in your life. It makes you feel alive, doesn't it? I always remember the famous mountain climber Simpson. I'm trying to think of his first name. A very good motivational speaker. And he said, you never feel more alive than when you're risking it, you know, and those are the things you remember forever. And we probably do live in such a safe society now. Everything is governed by health and safety, and, you know, people worrying about the least little thing. But actually exploring nature and being more comfortable with the things that can come your way, that's what makes life exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that opportunity to get away, whether it's in the UK or France, going and seeing a different culture, so valuable. And to get away from that stress and that time out. Yeah, I think one of the things you picked out there about why people like these sort of short, frequent visits, why people are getting away is this loss of stress, you know, or the lack of stress in actually getting a holiday together. And one of the things that I realized when I was putting together the report, and the way we do this is we look at the big pressures people face now and we look at the big trends. Clearly, one of the big trends coming in is the increasing capabilities of technology to take stress off us. Sometimes it creates stress as well. But, you know, you look at some of the applications of technology, in particular artificial intelligence, to holidays in the next few years. You think about things like the new personal digital assistant, the new PDA. I don't know if you're a gadget geek like me, but back in the 2000s, we all had a pre-smartphone. We all had our PDAs with our diaries on and everything. Well, I think the new PDA is going to be a digital assistant that gets to know you, knows what you want, and does all the really horrible bits of life admin for you, like booking transport, sorting out insurance, sorting out your car insurance, or getting the best bank account. And it could absolutely help sort out your holiday. You know, you just sort of browse around the Willoughby catalogue, whatever it may be, find your destination. You say, I want to go there, and it just does the rest. It could be an even more stress-free experience getting away in the future. And you combine that with the possibility of autonomous vehicles, something that's a bit further away than people think right now. We think realistically, based on a report I wrote earlier this year for another company, about 30 years out before we're going to have a really serious autonomous vehicle, which can just pull up at your house, you load the family in, and it takes you to wherever you want to go without you even thinking. You can just play cards all the way. You know, how stress-free a holiday in the UK could be at that point.
Well, that sounds terrific. I hope I live long enough to appreciate that one.
You and me both.
Now, we're welcoming people's comments, aren't we? We want to know whether people listening to us today prefer the short holiday or the long holiday. We'd like people's comments, wouldn't we? Absolutely. I don't know if you can see it already there.
Yeah, so Jim, we've had a few people asking us about which particular sites. We've talked about the places you and I like to go on holiday. And we've had a few other questions come in as well. One about actually the effect of COVID. You know, do you think COVID will affect holiday trends in the future? I don't know about you. I sadly think this may not be the last pandemic we're facing. So even once we get over this one, and hopefully this one educates us, teaches us how to deal with it, ensures we have a better response next time around. But I certainly think, the possibility of future pandemics is going to be a factor in planning our holidays for certainly the next few years. Don't know what you think, Dr. Hilary.
No, absolutely. Look, we're in the middle of a pandemic now. We're seeing the beginning, I think, of a second spike. And of course, this impacts on aviation. And we all love to be able to get in a jet and fly somewhere quickly and maybe get some sunshine or see some mountains or go and see relatives. But actually, the reality right now is that COVID-19 is real. It's still virulent. It's on the increase. And, 100 people packed on a plane, it's an enclosed space. And this is how the virus got here in the first place, from the other side of the world. So it makes the globe quite a small place. It makes it a big incubator, if you like, of potential disease. And I think people are thinking that way. And that's why, if you look at what's happening now with staycations, they're even more popular than they've ever been, because people are saying, let's just get away. We don't need to go too far. Let's keep the risk, let's keep the bubble small. Let's go in the car. Let's stay in a staycation holiday home. We can control this ourselves and we feel safe. And safety will be a major factor. And as you say, the world is changing. We want to know that where we go, it's safe, that we have a health service that we can rely on. We can certainly do that in the UK. We're blessed with the NHS, and people do obviously not often know how lucky we are to have it. When they go abroad, they find out. I mean, for the States, for example, if you get lumbered with a bill in the States, you might have to sell your home in order to get home after paying the bill. So we shouldn't take the NHS for granted. So, yeah, I think this will impact on what we do and where we go, and how safe we feel, very much so. Look, before we see another comment, I just wanted to share with you what the report said about why people feel that they need to get away, how they know they're stressed and they need a break in the first place. I think this is really interesting. So how do people know when they feel stressed and they need a break? And it depends on your age group. This is what we found from the survey, and this was a big survey. So if you're aged 18 to 25, and you must be just outside that, Tom.
only just.
You're more likely to feel grumpy. Grumpiness would be the first sign that you need to get away. Irritable, grumpy, shouting at your parents a bit more. In the next decade, between 26 and 35, you would just feel stressed. You'd feel that the world's closing in on you. You can't cope. You're reaching for the alcohol. You can't sleep. All those physical symptoms of stress. You may be blaming other people for things that aren't really their fault, taking it out on the people that you're closest to. Give it another 10 years. Where are you then? If you're 36 to 45, you're unable to do your job properly, You don't even want to leave the house. It's got that bad. You know, you're feeling withdrawn now. Things are closing in on you. If you're 46 to 50, get quite tearful. You know, things are really that bad. They're getting you down. You're feeling a little bit low in mood, even a little bit depressed as well as anxious. And 51 to 65, you're beginning to feel like a failure. The things haven't worked out. You feel unsociable. You don't want to mix with other people. And then if you're over 65, you just give people the silent treatment. So none of that's very satisfactory. It's very interesting, I think, that people don't always recognize stress in themselves. I've seen so many patients and friends who, you know, when you talk to them, they suddenly realize what stress they're under. They haven't acknowledged it before. They haven't understood why they're not sleeping very well, why they're smoking too much or drinking too much, why they've given up exercise, they're snappy. And sometimes it's quite good to reflect and relax. And I think one of the reasons people like a staycation on a regular basis, because sometimes 3 days can feel like a week once you've made that decision to get away, open up the horizons a bit. And after 3 days, you can feel like you've been away for 2 weeks. And that's all you need to recharge the batteries.
It's that moment of reflection, isn't it? You know, I think we're increasingly aware of mental health issues now. They've suddenly become much more open, much more public, much more widely discussed. And yet, when you're in it, when you're there, when you're stressed, when you're in this always on lifestyle, it's so hard to take even that hour, 2 hours out when you've got the pressures of the kids and the pressures of work and the pressures of keeping the house running, to actually step back and say, do you know what, crikey, I am stressed. Yeah. And so actually, I really love that idea of the having those scheduled moments where you know you're going to get away, when you know you're going to step back, even if you haven't realized that the stress is there, that you've got those few days to go. And I was staying on a farm recently where there was no mobile phone signal, which was just fantastic because I had an analog week of books and scribbling stuff on paper. And it does give you that opportunity to step back, hold up a mirror to yourself and say, what's going on? Am I good? Am I not?
Very much so. And you mentioned technology before. It can help or hinder us. It can be a source of stress. And in the future, maybe we'll have these digital personal assistants. That sounds fantastic. And they'll be able to help us do things at the drop of a hat by giving them a verbal command, perhaps. Great. But actually, we know, don't we, that too much technology can really stress people out. I mean, we're exposed to blue light from our screens, whether it's our tablet or whether it's our phone or whether it's the TV in our bedroom. You know, people are spending many hours every day on a screen. And not only is that bad for your eyesight, but it is keeping you alert and awake 100% of the time. And it's no wonder that people are sleeping an hour or 2 hours less than we used to a few decades ago. We're actually getting less sleep and getting more tired.
There's been a really interesting trend recently for particularly the younger generations. So you've got these poor generations in the middle for whom these always on screens were a total novelty and jumped in with both feet and really don't have the mental controls to step in and step out of them. But actually, if you observe some of the younger generations coming through now, they have a much more conscious relationship with this technology quite often. And they're really starting to crave, as I said, some of this more physical, tactile stuff. And I think this plays into what the future holiday might look like. You know, a really good example of this is with music. You know, 80% of the music or so we consume now is digital. It's streamed, it comes through a phone. And yet the younger generations have got this huge craving for vinyl, this really tactile, analog, manual thing that gives you a much more sort of analog sense, a much more much greater connection to music, as well as spending lots more on going and seeing live music as well, where you're really getting that sort of visceral experience. And I think we're going to see the same with holidays. We're still going to want technology in our holiday homes. We're going to want them to take some of the stress out of life, do some things automatically, allow us to program meals easily, sort of to set the lights, set the heating, manage all that in the background. But it's going to be really subtle. It's going to be this sort of invisible luxury technology when you go on holiday. But actually, you're going to spend most of your time focused on the stuff that's not technology, that's not obvious technology anyway, that really is that much more natural experience.
Absolutely. Now, do we have any other questions from people logging on?
So lots of people who are soon to be or new Willoughby customers, which is really interesting to see. Lots of people saying nice things down there, which is great. But yeah, we did a few other questions. One of these, like, we talked a bit about what is it that British holidays that people really love. We've talked about that loss of stress and that sort of ease of getting there. But what else do you think it is? What else really appeals to people? And why are we seeing this massive boom in staycations at the moment? Because I don't think it's just down to the pandemic. I think people are starting to recognize to some extent what we've got here.
Oh, absolutely. I think people like, as you say, the tactile experience of seeing forests and walks and grassland and the sea, having views like that. The smells of greenery, of plants, having a nice wind coming off the sea, doing some boating, maybe some rock climbing, things that we don't really associate with this country. We often go away, and when we go away, they're very touristy, these spots, aren't they? You can sort of almost anticipate what you're going to get on many package holidays. You're going to have the beach, you're going to have the deck chair, you're going to have the fish, the chicken and chips in the restaurant, where you should be having some more traditional meals based on that culture. But I think here in the UK, you can be amazed at how beautiful our nature is here, and smell those smells and appreciate the views that you can get. Some of the views stunning. As I say, Lake District is one of my favourite, and you walk up some of those tours and you look down into the valleys at the lakes below, and it just takes your breath away.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm lucky enough to live in reasonable distance of some of these things in the north, and just getting out in the car and getting out to the Peak District or the Goyt Valley or some of these places, it's just a reminder of just how beautiful the surroundings we have here are. So I think we're probably going to have to get towards wrapping it up. I think incredibly, we've been about nearly half an hour. We've been chatting already.
Really?
Absolutely. So
go on.
I was going to say, I'm really sorry if we didn't get to your questions. We've had some really good questions in today. It's been great chatting to people.
There were.
And thanks for the lovely feedback in the chat as well. We've had some really nice comments going on there. People enjoying the chat and people who really enjoyed the report as well. So I'll hand it over to you, Dr. Hilary, to wrap things up.
Yeah, well, people can get more information by going direct to the website, the Willoughby website. There's plenty of detail there on the report, which I found absolutely fascinating. So take a look and see where you compare to other people there. Thank you so much for the questions that you have sent in. They're all interesting. They're all about family relationships and how people combine together on a staycation. You can find out about locations around the country, and the kind of places that you can stay in. And I tell you, having been to a couple of exhibitions, looking at these staycation homes where you can stay, they are amazing. So you can rough it if you want, but you can also live in 5-star luxury in a place in the middle of nature. And for me, that is just a brilliant combination of things. You can and meet like-minded people as well. People who've made the same sort of decisions as you. People with similar families. The kids can get together. So it's when life seems life seems a bit sort of gloomy sometimes. There's always a positive, and there are so many positives. We've lived through worse than this, and we will get through this. And I think staycations will be one of those things at the top of the list that will help us do that. What do you think, Tom?
Absolutely, completely agree. I'm thinking about planning my next one already.
Me too. Well, it's great to speak to you, and I look forward to hearing more about that crystal ball of yours.
Brilliant. Cheers, Hilary.
Thank you. Bye for now. Bye-bye.